have leaked through about ourselves.
And when an invitation to have lunch with some of the mob took a strange turn, Damien thought his cover may have been blown.
We pull up at his farmhouse and he says, have you got anything on you? And he frisks me. I couldn't wear devices in that job anyway because we didn't have backup. Backup was 2 hours away because people would see who's coming into the town and so forth. You know, I was unnerved at this stage. I didn't know what was going on. And he says, I want to show you something. And we walked through the narrows of an orange grove. And, you know, my brain was clicking over, am I in trouble here? Automatically you think of the old Mafia movies, you know, here I go. We get to the end and he basically tells me to kneel down. I knelt down and in my mind I'm thinking, am I right or wrong? One, I don't want to stuff up this job. We've all done too much work. And two, if I am wrong, I mean, what can I do anyway? You know, I'm not armed. You know, the minute I took off, it's just a matter of pulling a trigger. So basically, he tells me to look into the bushes. So I'm not only kneeling down, but I'm sort of crouching my head down. And there was nothing there. And that's when I thought, well, this is where he's going to do it. I'm gone, you know, and you hear all the stories about other people that have just disappeared, you know, in relation to this group. And, you know, I said, mate, and he says, in further. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a garbage bag that was hidden in the bushes, and it turned out that it was the cannabis that we'd ordered, 12-pounder cannabis. That's why he took me there, but, you know, whether he wanted to see how I reacted, whether he wanted to show that he was in charge, you know, things could happen that easily, whether he wanted to see whether, you know, black pajama men jump out of the bushes. Who knows, but it did unsettle me, but, you know, thank God it wasn't the way that I thought.
Next, the mob takes care of its own. Australia's biggest ecstasy bust puts Griffith back in the headlines.
We don't know where he is buried.
And one man's courage.
Although there are people alive today in this community who most certainly do.
In the name of his father. Undercover cop Damien Marrett had successfully infiltrated one of the country's biggest Calabrian mafia rings, headed up by Ross Trimboli and Tony Romeo. After 18 months of intense planning, it was now time for Operation Afghan to strike.
Right throughout the job, we were setting up to purchase a ton of cannabis coming from Papua New Guinea. So it was going to be transferred from Papua New Guinea to Horn Island and then flown down to New South Wales, Kahuna Airport. We hired a Cessna. We took Ross Trimboli, the pilot from New Guinea, and a man.
This is the actual surveillance footage from the Cessna. Captured by a pin-sized camera the police had hidden in a gap in the plane's interior panels.
How was your trip?
Here you can see Damien greeting Ross Trimboli. This flight was a dummy run to see how much they could carry.
We all went up just to make sure that we knew exactly how this was going to work. We landed on Horn Island. We spoke about how quick we could load the cannabis into the plane, how much the plane could hold.
So the maximum amount has got to be 750 kilo. I know we probably could get a tonne, but absolute maximum 750. This training run we did, we tested it out, because this is the plane. We'll pull all the seats out, all the cargo hold will be empty. And we just can't do any more than 750, alright? unless we put a trailer on the back.
Damien was dealing well with the intense pressure of being undercover, but this plane trip would push him to the limit.
Any friendliness that I had towards Trimboli stopped on that aeroplane when the conversation was led on to the NCA bombing in Adelaide. It was still very raw to coppers that somebody had killed a copper, especially by parcel bomb. When Ross started talking about the NCA, it was very flippant, and the way he spoke about what happened, his words were, he messed with our family, he was very hard on our family, we had to do it, fuck him. Everything just stopped for me. I wanted to strangle this bloke, and the hatred that I had for him at that time, I could not mask, and I had to turn away, look out a window or whatever. He was talking about a decent copper who had been killed simply for doing his job.
But knowing what was at stake, Damien kept his cover. After a successful dummy run, they set off to Horn Island to pick up almost a ton of cannabis. The police made the call.
The nationwide raids and arrests followed the interception of a light aircraft on Horn Island in northern Queensland with 750 kilograms of marijuana worth an estimated $6 million was expected to be seized. It was not on the plane, but police launched the nationwide raids, claiming the conspiracy was well established over many months with recent seizures of cocaine and marijuana.
257 police raided 17 homes and businesses. Tony Romeo was charged with conspiracy to traffic drugs and conspiracy to import drugs. Ross Trimboli was charged with drug trafficking and conspiring to import drugs. They were each sentenced to 10 years jail. 6 others got sentences of 3 or 4 years.
To arrest figures like Romeo, Trimboli and all the others, and the soldiers, the Italian soldiers on the streets of Griffith, was a huge thing for that town to see that happen.
Fill that up.
Tony Romeo was released from jail in May 2002 after serving just 6 years of his 10-year sentence. His release was not welcomed by all. Six weeks after Tony Romeo's release from jail, he was shot dead. In true Mafia style, no one saw anything and no motive ever confirmed.
One theory is that it was in retaliation for an affair that he was having with another Italian figure's wife. The second theory was that it was the embarrassment that he had brought on the families up there for accepting undercovers into the group, and just general stuff that came out at trial. And the third one was he had actually been given information to police during his time in jail.
As the older Mafia members disappeared, the new generation stepped up.
They're far more entrepreneurial, they're far more flamboyant, they spend their wealth visibly, and perhaps that ultimately will make them vulnerable.
Police had been waiting more than a year, and this morning they swooped.
On August the 8th, 2008, the luck ran out for one massive syndicate, alleged to have Griffith Mafia connections.
15 million pills with a street value of almost $500 million, carefully hidden inside tin tomatoes shipped from Italy to Melbourne.
Each of these pills cost 75 cents to manufacture in Europe. Here they wholesale for $14 and then sell on the street for over $30.
This syndicate is alleged to be involved in something in the order of 60% of importations coming into Southeast Australia.
Next, 30 years on, Donald Mackay remembered. The township forever branded as a Mafia stronghold.
We didn't realise that we still had such element in the community.
And for Damien Marrett, a most unlikely ending.
Police had been waiting more than a year, and this morning they swooped. 15 million pills with a street value of almost $500 million, carefully hidden inside 10 tomatoes shipped from Italy to Melbourne.
This recent ecstasy haul is a huge win for police in the fight against mafia crime gangs. But definitely not a win for the people of Griffith.
I think that shook Griffith even more so than when Don disappeared. The fact that Griffith could be housing some of the principals in such a huge deal made people wake up and say, well, we didn't realise that we still had such element in the community.
We would like to thank the Griffith Rotary Club for proposing this memorial and seeing it through.
On the 10th of October 2008, 31 years after the disappearance of Griffith furniture store owner Donald Mackay, he was honoured when this statue of him was unveiled.
Our father was never given the opportunity to see his youngest child start school, the opportunity to see any of his children get married. He wasn't even allowed to rest in peace. We don't know where he is buried, although there are people alive today in this community who most certainly do. In 1979, the Woodward Royal Commission named Francesco Sergi, Dominic Sergi, Antonio Sergi, Francesco Barbaro, Robert Trimboli and Antonio Sergi from the winery as the persons responsible for ordering the murder of our father. 31 years later, these individuals have still not faced any charges in relation to this crime.
Some might say they got away with murder.
All bar one of them is still alive, and I believe they all still live in our community. Yeah, that hurts. It hurts when I run into them just socially at various things, and it's a little bit hard to take sometimes, yeah.
The mafia activities based in Griffith blackened the reputation of a whole town, particularly hundreds of families with Italian names.
I believe that there's a group of criminals amongst a few families in Griffith. I don't think it's widespread throughout the community. Unfortunately, those individuals do wield some influence within their community. The greatest tragedy, I think, is that there's so many people with the same surnames as these people, and it's a great shame that they get tarred with a brush that they shouldn't be tarred with, and I think that's a tragedy.
Damien Marrett spent 5 days in the witness box helping to bust the Griffith Mafia. He has since left the force, but the scars remain.
Over the 6 years, I knew that I was having certain problems in certain areas, but it wasn't until I left the Undercover squad that I realised I did have some pretty big issues, some carryover from all that time, whether it be paranoia, aloofness, secretive, I wanted to work by myself all the time, things like that. It took a fair while to get over that time in my life.
Damien has since gone on to become a successful author. Those arrested for the huge ecstasy haul are awaiting trial in Melbourne. The fight against mafia criminal activity in Australia continues on both a state and national level.